50-yard line.
It is 4 p.m. Eastern on Friday, November 15th, which means it is time for the Audible. I'm with my guys, Donnie, Rightside, and the Whale Capper, ready to go over official plays, break down each and every game alongside these great cappers in the chat. Donnie, Rightside, it's Football Friday. How you doing today?
Doing good, man. Recharged, ready to go. It's almost time for Sunday kickoff. Exciting times last night. But, Jimmy, we got to look forward to it. We can't just pontificate on the past. We got to move forward to Sunday and make some money out there.
We have to move forward. It's well put. On Monday, I went ahead and made 4 prop bets as a official low bag Audible plays and lost them all. My record is falling apart, but one man's record is not falling apart. Cashed another winner on the under last night. That would be the Whale Capper. Whale Capper, how you doing, my man?
No better feeling than headed into the weekend as a winner. In seriousness, though, Week 11 card looks fun. That under last night really was a fun one, too. Just an ugly game from all sorts of angles, and then the fact that it devolved at the end there like that was wild. So plenty of entertainment. If you're not entertained by this, then find another slant. But good start to the week.
It's been a wild month for me. I've lost $1,908 in NFL this month. I lost 526, I believe, in the Breeders' Cup. But I'm only down $86 this month because I'm crushing NHL and NBA. So I'm okay. My life could be much, much better, but it's not that bad. Shout out to all the cappers in chat. We got Robert Weimer with a hilarious opening. Great stuff from Robert Weimer. Jeff Billings in the house. Jeff Billings, I'll have you know that I did tail. I put $100 on the Sharks to win the Pacific Division last night at plus 2,000. Woke up this morning, it was plus 1,500. Plus 1,500 when I woke up this morning. So I wish I put more than $100 on it, but that's a different sport altogether. Sean Mick, Steve Murrin, DX Filer, Long Balls, Larry, Deer Slayer Ski, Oscar, Valverde, Vincente, Ramirez, Nico, Dennis Garcia, Joe Yurkovich, the Sports 78 Capper, John, Gerald Jones. What a great group here. Let's get after it right now. Donnie, we're going to start with a game that finally got on the board. Finally has arrived on the boards. Let's pull up that board here at sportsbookreview.com. The best odds page in the business. That would be Dallas, Detroit. There were 6.5s across the board about an hour and a half ago. It's now a lot of 7s. This total opened up at 46.5. It's gone up to 47. So get to have another look at Jeff Driscoll. Must-watch TV. Dallas coming off a loss to Minnesota at home. They've lost 4 of 6. Amari Cooper has said that he is good to go. It's interesting because Dallas's offense is so strong right now, but they're averaging 437-plus yards a game. Best offense on third down, and here they've lost 4 of 6 games. And Zeke either has a great game or a terrible game. He's coming off a game where he rushed for 47 yards on 20 carries. Longest carry was 6 yards. And Driscoll wasn't so bad. Career highs, 27 to 46, 269 yards. He wasn't so bad against the tough Bears defense. Donnie Rightside, let's start with you. Cowboys, Lions.
Yeah, God is blessing the Dallas Cowboys. Seems like every single week the Cowboys are going to face the opponent's best player who's not going to suit up. And looks like that's going to be the case again this week as we have no Matthew Stafford on this. Hey, broken back, particles floating around. Certainly going to need a couple weeks to get off of that. But looking at this game as a whole, Jimmy, watching it from the perspective of last week versus the Bears. The Bears end up winning. I don't want to say comfort. It was 20-13. Detroit had the ball at the end of the football game. But if you watch that game from start to finish, Detroit had no offense out there. I mean, Jeff Driscoll is a better athlete than Matthew Stafford, and we'll leave it at that. Not being able to get it to elite wide receivers. Yes, the Chicago Bears have a very good defense, but that doesn't leave too much to the imagination this week if you're looking to get behind Detroit. Now, earlier in the week, maybe if you jumped the line and said, hey, you know what? I think Stafford's going to play. I'm going to get 4, 4.5, whatever. But now as we look at the lines, 6.5, 7s across the board as we check it out. It would be Dallas Cowboys, and I would say Dallas Cowboys only for me in this football game, even though the line got away. We were staring at it, Jimmy, on the Audible, some lines 3.5 and 4s out there. If you could read the tea leaves and knew Matthew Stafford was out for this football game, you could have got a lot of value on that. But obviously, we're going to break it down as if it were 6.5 and 7 today. The one thing that I like about this football game, if you're betting it, is the Dallas offense. They are in overdrive, especially the last couple weeks. And you're looking at an offense, Jimmy, number 1 in yards per play in the NFL, passing yards per play, number 1, and also rushing yards per play, 6th. That matches up extremely well against Detroit. But last week, I actually had a total on the over for the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears game, but that was with Stafford coming in, being able to maybe push a couple points across the board to keep Chicago engaged from the offensive level. If you're looking for a total in this football game, Detroit's really not going to help you out too much. And even if you're looking at just maybe a Dallas Cowboys total, just a team total themselves, I don't know how much that from Detroit's going to be able to push Dallas in the scoring and what you need, that 28, 29, 30-point margin. It's a tough game. Stay away at 7 points. If you got it early in the week, congratulations.
Team total you were interested in earlier on Tuesday, Donnie. It's 27.5 at my book. Would you fire over that?
They should get it. They really should. But I don't want to have that same tactic last week because I actually had my personal play last week, Jimmy. The Chicago Bears over 21.5. Chicago scored 3 touchdowns with 10 minutes to go in the third quarter, but they didn't have to do anything else the rest of the ballgame because Detroit was anemic on offense. I would hate to see me betting that team total over and sitting on a 24 number when, the Detroit Lions have 13 points or 10 points and there's no reason to score anymore.
Sports 78 says lean Dallas, but possible look ahead to Patriots next week. Hard to back a team where there's plenty of turmoil with the coaches and players past, he says. Robert Weimer says Dallas wins, gets out of town here, can't play the over. Dennis Garcia says lean under in this game. If Dallas gets a lead, they'll get conservative and run the ball. Do you trust Detroit to score it? The answer is no from me. Whale Capper, Cowboys, Lions.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to talk anyone into the Lions, and I'm not getting involved in backing Jeff Driscoll in today's NFL. No way. But I will strike a little fear into the heart if you're thinking of laying the points with Dallas here, because we saw a pretty similar situation when they went to the Jets. They were looking ahead to that. They got caught looking ahead to that Philadelphia Eagles game. I don't think there's any other way you can kind of rewrite history there. That was a poor performance by Dallas, and I think this sets up pretty well. The chat nailed it. Look ahead spot here for the Cowboys. They got New England on deck. They got a short week with Thanksgiving on the Bills after that. Like, this game just doesn't mean nearly as much to them as a couple of their other games coming up here. And I was really, really disappointed in the Dallas defense on Sunday Night Football. They were not up for that game. They were not tackling with intensity. They were not playing with intensity. It was a very, kind of an inside look. Maybe they're kind of falling apart at the seams. And really, all of these things happen when you have a poorly teamed coach. We know Jason Garrett is not getting it done as a head coach in this league, but Jerry Jones keeps him around because he doesn't question his authority. And I would expect that Dallas maybe they underwhelm here. Maybe they even take a loss. But I certainly am not laying 7 points on the road with this situation with them looking ahead here, and especially the way their defense is playing. Because, Jeff Driscoll was frisky last week. I had that Bears -2.5. And that was a cold sweat at the end of that game as he was moving the ball down the field on the Bears defense. And, there's really no, there's enough weapons. The offensive line stepped up their play. The Lions overall seem like they have not given up or quit on their coach, which we were kind of aware of or keen on or preparing for. So I think this one's an easy one to stay away from with all the uncertainty surrounding the quarterback situation for the Lions and the effort level for the Cowboys.
And that is exactly what I shall do, is stay off Cowboys at Lions. And then we get to a very extremely interesting game that I have made a move on a side. I still have some interest in a total move here, but I am backing the Buccaneers +6. I got it at -115. Bucs are a tricky team to cap and a tricky team to back. Last in NFL in pass defense, lead the NFL in run defense. They're allowing 299 yards through the air, giving up 31 points per game. It looks like Mike Edwards, Sean Murphy, Bunting, and Jamel Dean will be starting. So 3 rookies will be starting in the secondary, and that's not good. They'll also have Jordan Whitehead, a second-year player. But I am fading the Saints, and maybe this will blow up in my face, but Marshawn Lattimore I don't expect to be in the lineup. So you move P.J. Williams to cornerback, C.J. Gardner into Williams' usual nickel spot. They can get hurt badly by this spectacular wide receiver duo that these Buccaneers have. Then you also have Andrews Pete, 2018 Pro Bowl, breaking his arm. So Will Clapp, second year at LSU, comes off the bench to replace him. And Breeze was sacked 6 times last week. I just feel like this is too many points. Is this the spot for the Saints to bounce back on the road against a divisional opponent when Breeze clearly does not have zip on the ball? I like the pieces on the Buccaneers defense with Vita, Sue, and JPP. I like that they've waived Vernon Hargreaves. I mean, they put so many draft picks in their secondary that some of these young guys are capable of stepping up, and that was the reason why they waived Vernon Hargreaves. So I'm on the Buccaneers +6. Donnie Rightside, Saints Bucks.
Before that last win on Sunday, Jimmy, they did have 4 straight losses, but most of those games, as you could see, or actually all those games on the road, with the preference of one being overseas, a game in London. When we take a look at those 4 games, the one thing I do like is the fight that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had, because when you take a look at the game against New Orleans, down in the Dome, 31-24, they played Carolina 37-26, but if you remember that ball game, it basically was wrapped up by the fourth quarter, but Jameis Winston threw that late interception, which could have brought that game back to within 1 score, maybe 2 or 3 points. At Tennessee, 27-23, where you had that weird freak play on a fake field goal, which technically should have went the other way with a Buccaneers win, but they didn't win. Seattle game, they had control of that football game. They ended up losing in overtime. Then they have a nice win last week versus a game Arizona squad, 30-27. I think they're going to be in the ball game here, Jimmy. I'm on the same wavelength as you, and for the show was an official show play at +6 for Tampa Bay. Oh no, Donnie, they're going to, now you're going to take a look at New Orleans. They're going to be angry coming out of the bye, and losing coming out of the bye versus the Atlanta Falcons going on the road. We know they struggle a little bit on the road. They should have a better offensive performance. But then again, Andrews Pete's going to be down with a broken arm on the line. That's going to make a difference. And also, as you talked about with the defensive backfield being down their top corner for New Orleans, that all plays into it, because if you're down cornerbacks are not at full strength in your secondary, Tampa Bay's that team that should be able to exploit it. I'm not really sure about the total itself, because I don't really know what I get week to week out of New Orleans, because last week the offense doesn't do well, but the one thing looks like the defense is pretty engaged. Usually with Tampa Bay, Jimmy, we like to agree that they play to a total over as opposed to under, just the way their weapons are built. And again, they struggle a little bit on defense as well. But I think Tampa Bay is going to be game in this one. Do I know if they can pull off the upset? Possibly, but I'll be comfortable leaning on that +6 points here on the Audible.
As will I, and I don't want to make a move on this total. I see Akira on the under. Our Guru Sports Bets on betting with the bag also on the under. And we talked about on Tuesday just the vividness bias of these teams lighting it up, and I've got to stay away from that. So I'm only going to make a move on Buccaneers +6 and -115. Whale Capper, Saints Bucks.
I think you guys found the right side here. I'm not getting involved personally. I have really, really gotten fooled now twice by the Saints team, and this is a game where I'm looking to do a lot of reconnaissance and figure out if the Saints are contenders or not down the stretch, because it's pretty clear handicap here. Neither team is going to be able to run the ball. You have a very solid run-stopping unit for Tampa Bay that's going to force, a limited Alvin Kamara and, a kind of a below-average Latavius Murray. They're not going to be factors. So it's entirely on Drew Brees' arm. It's entirely on his ability to pick on a very weak secondary with Tampa Bay. And a fully healthy, a fully engaged Sean Payton and Drew Brees pick this defense apart. They name their number. They score 30+ points. But what we saw from Drew Brees last week against Atlanta was way, way below what I expected. And I thought that the time off when he was recovering from his thumb injury was going to lead to, a more, some added time to get his shoulder right, so he could, he had a live arm come November, December, but it looks like he just might be done. Like, he's thrown all the passes that he's going to throw with any kind of, you called it, he had no zip on the ball. And it looks like he may be dealing with a rib injury or a core injury. All of this is a huge red flag. And if he can't put up points against this very suspect Tampa Bay defense, then this is a huge problem. And they're pretty much, you can pretty much cross them off as contenders down the stretch, because they're not going to get home field. They're going to have to go on the road in probably cold weather and ask Drew Brees to throw the ball a ton in the playoffs. That's not going to work. So this is a key moment really for the fabric of the season in the NFC and the way that the playoffs are going to shake out. So I would watch this game pretty carefully for signs of life in Drew Brees' arm. And I think +6 is probably a fair play, but I'd still like to see it. I still need to see confirmation here that Brees doesn't have it, because if he does, if it was just a bad day for them last week, if that was just a flat spot and he was just, they didn't have a great game plan and, they just all rolled out of the wrong side of the bed, then New Orleans is scoring 30 points on Sunday, and +6 is going to be a sweat. So best of luck to you guys. I think you got the right side, but I gotta do some homework on this one.
Yeah, I also jumped in on Saints futures. Terrible time. My futures are looking pretty good, although much different than my week-to-week action. Let's move on to Falcons. Panthers opened at 6.5 for the Panthers, and we're all the way down to 4. The total at 50.5, down to 49.5 and 49. I was initially interested in this over, and now I don't know what to do with this game. I mean, we talked on Tuesday that it's not like this Falcons team is a good football team all of a sudden. I still don't know what to do with that game in New Orleans. Matt Ryan, always good against these Panthers. 6-1 in his past 7, averaging 318 yards a game, 15 TDs, 3 picks, 14-8 against them all time. Carolina's defense is looking terrible. They've allowed opponents to run for a combined 516 yards and 10 TDs in the past 3 games. Then you have Bradbury coming back from a groin injury, but Dante Jackson and Ross Cockrell are hurt. So there's the second and third best guys in that secondary. Back to the Falcons, Devonta Freeman. I'm expecting, maybe you guys have the most up-to-date information, but I'm expecting he's going to be held out, which means Brian Hill will be running the ball. And that, to me, is why this total is moving down, like going towards the under. I just, when Brian Hill, he's just nothing compared to Freeman. I don't understand exactly why, but I've not had a good read on either of these two teams, especially the Falcons. So I've got no play on this as of yet. Let's see what Donnie Rightside has to say. Falcons-Panthers.
Yeah, I don't have anything official play on this, but it's all right sometimes to disagree with the line movement here. Do I think it should have gone higher and above over 7? Probably not. But seeing it drop down to that 4 range, I try to take a look and say, take out of like just what you saw last week. And is this a new rebirth of the Atlanta Falcons? I mean, down Devonta Freeman, who hasn't had the best year at all. So I don't know how much of a loss Devonta Freeman actually is. But losing, your tight end Hooper in this football game, that's certainly not going to help. But, when we're looking from a Carolina perspective, and I don't know how, going to Green Bay in the cold and the snow and playing them to a virtual draw within 6 inches of actually tying the football game up with a possible chance of sending to overtime, I thought they played very well. Did they get banged up a little bit? Yes, but most of the guys that they need this week, there's a couple guys down in the secondary, but not big household names. McCaffrey looks like he's going to be healthy after struggling with maybe a foot injury earlier in the week. But then I look and say, all right, let's not lose focus of what we're actually getting in this football game. They beat Jacksonville at home 34-27. They go on the road to Tampa Bay. They beat them 37-26. They get pasted on the road in a tough spot there at San Francisco. All right, we'll take that one out. But then they come home and play a game Tennessee team and beat them 30-20. And then you saw last week again, within 6 inches of actually tying Green Bay in the snow in that football game. Just because Atlanta came out of the bye and played their Super Bowl, beat the New Orleans Saints, and doubled their sack total in one football game, that doesn't mean we're just going to be rolling downhill the rest of the year at the Atlanta Falcons. That was a big emotional game for them, a coach-saving game, celebration on the sidelines. Now you got to go back on the road again, back-to-back weeks in your own division. I think 4 is a cheap number, to be honest with you, Jimmy. Here, I like what I see out of the Panthers. Yeah, they lost last week, but we're not just going to say, hey, we loved Atlanta in the summer, and now here they are like we always thought they were going to be. I don't believe that yet.
Atlanta's pass rush had 7 sacks all year before the New Orleans game. Then they put up 6 against the Saints. I don't know what to do with this Falcons team. It's perplexing. I can understand the look on Carolina, and I can understand the public pushing this line down because of what the Falcons did last week, and I don't want to get too caught up in it because I can't fully understand it. Whale Capper, what are you going to do here with Falcons-Panthers?
I agree with Donnie that Carolina -4 is cheap, and that shouldn't surprise anyone because I laid 5.5. So this one went hard against me, and the way I would evaluate the market sentiment here, with public coming, with money, influential money coming in on Atlanta and the under, somebody believes that there is more than is being told about how serious Christian McCaffrey's injury is. So it's worth keeping an eye on that. It's worth kind of evaluating with your own eyes on Sunday to see if he's healthy, see if he's ready to go. I personally think he will be fine. I personally don't really care one way or the other because I look at the other side of the ball and I see an enormous letdown spot for Atlanta, especially their defense. They haven't fixed anything in terms of their personnel. They moved some coaching around, but what I saw against the Saints was, they just played up. They got pressure up the middle. They benefited from some untimely injuries on the part of New Orleans. That was much more of an indication of the Saints' state than it was at all the Falcons. I think the Falcons, we know who they are, and we know how you can attack them. And I think Kyle Allen, who can play mistake-free football, can put some points up on this team. On the flip side, when the Carolina defense is on the field, they can generate some pressure. They're going to be going up against an offensive line that I think is in the bottom 10 of the NFL. And I would expect that they get pressure, that they wreak havoc, that they make it a long day for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan does not have a safety valve in terms of a running back to go to in this spot. With the injuries that they've sustained, and Hooper has been an enormous part of their offense. So you take those two things away, and you ask him to get it done simply with throwing it to his wide receivers, and then you look on the other side, and you think Carolina has a ball hawking unit that can create pressure, they can create takeaways in the passing game. This sets up, I think, pretty well for Carolina defense to show out, to give us a solid performance, and so all we really need is Kyle Allen to play kind of 4 quarters of mistake-free football. And I think Carolina gets a pretty comfortable win here at home.
Robert Weimer says Falcons outside for once this season. They suck on grass. Sean Mix says Falcons raised their game against bitter rivals last week. Don't see a repeat this week. Willie Balter says Donnie's right. Falcons have to create momentum each week, knowing their season is essentially done. Robert Weimer says Saints were sleeping at the wheel last week. You can't judge the Falcons off that game. I am taking the lean towards the over off, and I am not going to make a move on a side in this game. I still am not a believer in this Panthers squad, and I'm just going to stay off. Let's move on to Jaguars, Colts. Colts opened up at -2.5. Now there are a few threes, also 2.5s on the board. This total stuck at 43.5. Jacoby Brissett is back in action this week. That's a sprained medial collateral ligament in his left knee that he will be playing with. For the first time in 13 months, Colts have lost back-to-back. Vinatieri's been awful. Just missed 6 extra points, 5 field goals this season. And
my God,
the Steelers. I mean, it's just so strange when you see Vinatieri, and your instinct is to be like, "Oh, good, this is law." I mean, when he missed that kick against the Steelers, it was about as upset as I've been watching football in a while. Indy allowing 18.2 points per game in the last 5 games. Their defense playing well, and what's Nick Foles going to give the Jaguars? Nick Foles back in action. He only took 11 snaps before breaking his left collarbone. Jaguars, Colts, I can't wait to hear your guys' breakdown on this, because this is a tricky spot. I'm not seeing things clearly either. So, Donnie, Rightside, Jaguars, Colts.
Yeah, I think the value on the Jacksonville Jaguars was getting the field goal here. Not so much that you're saying, well, we know Jacksonville can go in and win this football game, because they can. It's really a fate of Indianapolis, Jimmy, of what we're looking at right now. Because, yeah, you're looking at a game in the Steelers where Hoyer was pretty good in that football game, made some mistakes. Obviously, that key interception was like a 97-yard return by Minka Fitzpatrick. But also, you're right. You now have to factor in that you legitimately have a kicker on the fritz right now. You don't know if he can make extra points, 42-yarders, and you can say, hey, look, Jimmy, it's in Pittsburgh. It's notoriously tough to kick, field goals in Pittsburgh. He's missing the stuff in domes left and right. That's always going to come into play. Even as a seasoned veteran, you're only as good as your last kick in the NFL, especially the psychology of a kicker. It doesn't seem like he can get out of the way. And I like Frank Reich. I mean, he's loyal to a fault, but sometimes you just got to move on and say, you know what? Let me get a new kicker in here, because this could decide us going to the playoffs or not. So looking at this game individually, the one thing I still can't get out of my head is, look, Hoyer's not going to start. Brissett's going to start. Immediately you might think to yourself, like, ooh, that's fantastic. But the reason why we like Jacoby Brissett as a quarterback is he can improvise. He's still going to be banged up on that bad. He's going to wear a heavy, bulky brace on the one knee. He's not going to be able to get out of a lot of trouble if he needs to, that he might have done just a couple weeks ago before he was injured. But also no T.Y. Hilton. So when you look at this offense, it's a plotting offense. And normally we would take a look, Jim, and say, you know what we like about the Indianapolis Colts? Love their offensive line. They can get the running game going and get after it. If you take a look at their numbers, Jimmy, on the season, 18th overall in the NFL in points. The yards per play for the Indianapolis Colts this year, 25th in the NFL, passing 24th, and then even rushing, where you figure, like, hey, that big offensive line's paving the way for Marlon Mack. Only 19th in the NFL in yards per play on the ground. That's going to be a problem. The one thing you do have to take a little bit of a leap of faith is that the good thing about Nick Foles is it wasn't like a knee injury or a shoulder injury where it involved his throwing motion. Just a broken bone. He's been practicing for the past couple weeks. I think he's going to be good enough to win this football game on the road. I'm going to lean on taking the field goal. Again, if it's 2.5, I think Jacksonville can actually win this football game. I'm just not trusting right now the Indianapolis Colts until I see it get right back on the field when T.Y. Hilton gets out. Maybe Funchess comes back in a couple weeks and helps them out. That's when we'll believe. Even Paris Campbell, the young wide receiver that they got out of Ohio State, he's down as well. Not enough weapons for me. I think the better weapons are actually right now on the Jacksonville side, and I'll take that angle in this game, Jimmy.
It makes sense. It makes sense at this point. I mean, I'm just very curious to see what Foles is going to do in this spot. Whale Capper, Jaguars, Colts.
Yeah, I can't get involved in this one, not knowing exactly what kind of offense they're going to run around Nick Foles, and especially, I guess I'm mostly the injury concern with Brissett is real. The issue at the end of this career with Vinatieri is real. The Colts have the better coach, but that's really about it. And maybe the most important kind of injury that's gone untalked about this week is Darius Leonard, who's the most important part of their defense. You know, you take a defense with Leonard that the Colts are trotting out there week in, week out, and they're probably a little bit above average. You take him out of that defense, and they're like bottom 5. They're clearly much more porous on defense. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that Leonard injury news. And, you know, and even if he's a go, he's probably going to be limited if he doesn't get his full complement of snaps, if he's not his normal disruptive force out there. I think Jacksonville's probably live in this game. Really a sad state of affairs in Indianapolis, the way that this season is unfolded for them. And, you know, I think a full healthy season next year out of Brissett and Frank Reich together there. And if they can fix the kicker situation and, you know, not sustain some of these key injuries again next year, they'll be back in the mix. But it's looking like the Colts are fading here, and not a great time to be facing a quarterback like Nick Foles coming off of injured reserve here, who'd like to kind of, you know, prove that he was worth getting paid that money in the offseason, and, you know, has a little bit of pressure to perform after what Minshew did in his absence. So this is not a great spot for the Colts, and I'll just be watching and crossing my fingers that they could somehow get a win and stay in the playoff race.
Sounds like if you had a free play, it'd be on Jacksonville, though. Whale Capper.
Yeah, I probably would. If I had a free play, I'd probably take Jacksonville money line, and, you know, a lot of that just based on not loving the way that this Colts defense looks coming out without a healthy Darius Leonard.
And Donnie telling us that Darius didn't practice today. I'm going to add a question mark beside Jacksonville after hearing you guys break that game down. It might be something that I engage in. Let's move on to Broncos Vikings here. Broncos Vikings. Vikings open up at -10.5. There are 10s now as well as 10.5s. If you wanted 10.5, it's at +104. The total opened up at 39.5 and is now at 40 or 40.5. I almost made a move on the under after our show on Tuesday. I waited. The market was moving against me. I just perplexed how they could see this going over. And then I started studying more about the Vikings defense, and it's not been very good. It's their offense has been good. We were right. We were so right about saying that game for Cousins in New York against the Giants was a confidence builder, and now he's rolling. The Vikings are 4th in the NFL yards per play, 9th in points per game. Rudolph has 4 touchdowns in his last 4 games. And then look at these stats for Vikings defense. It's just, I'm surprised when I read them. They're 16th in the league, allowing a conversion rate of 38.7% on third down. On plays with 3rd and 10 or longer for the opponent, they're 23rd in the NFL. They're allowing first downs on 22.9% of the plays. Dallas went 3 for 3 in those situations last week. That just doesn't sound like the Vikings team I remember. Brandon Allen is not somebody that I believe in at all. But, you know, he's getting Tim Patrick back this week. You know, I don't know. I don't know how at first I thought how the Broncos going to put up any points. And then the more I looked at the Vikings defense, the more I thought, man, is this not a good defense anymore? We talked about how balanced of a team they are all year, but maybe their defense is not what will help them make it run through the playoffs. And we talked about maybe making future bets on the Vikings last week. And the more I studied them, the more I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want them anymore. Donnie, Rightside, Broncos, Vikings.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because of the way you bring it up there when you look at Minnesota and what the defense is and not doing. The one thing I do want to look at is when you look at Minnesota as a total in the season, if you engage them and they need to win in a shootout, they'll engage you and they can win in a shootout there, and their defense tries a whole serve. But the games that you want to take a look at, because Denver, I think we can agree, not really a juggernaut on offense. And it's, again, what we see over the past couple weeks is usually what trains your imagination at Kansas City. Like, even though Kansas City didn't have Patrick Mahomes in that football game, that's still a pretty elite offense with some great weapons. Last week, the Dallas Cowboys running in an elite level. You can almost argue that Dallas has the single best offense in the NFL. Now you're going to get the Denver Broncos with a rookie quarterback with one wide receiver that, Mike Zimmer can just do one of those Bill Belichick type scenarios and say, I'm going to take this wide receiver out of the game, see if you can beat me elsewhere. All right, you got a nice running back in Philip Lindsay, maybe a little bit of Royce Freeman. They should be able to shut that down. So when I'm looking from a perspective of, which side do I want to take in this, I like the fact that I can look at an under in this scenario, even though Minnesota got lit up the last 2 weeks. Let's take a look at the teams that don't really have a juggernaut offense. Washington, 19-9. Chicago, 16-6. In those type of fashions, because if Minnesota says we have to come out and we have to really get after you right away because your offense has a little bit of game to it, they can do that. But now Adam Thielen going to miss this football game again, so you're still going to have Stephon Diggs, you're going to have Dalvin Cook, who's a very good running back, and Kirk Cousins playing at a very high level. But I think when you come into this football game and you're a Minnesota Vikings football team, Denver can't really beat you on offense. So you want to slow it down, you want to slow the tempo. We know Mike Zimmer, king of, boy, I really would like to see us run that football. This seems like a perfect game because what's not a slouch in this football game is Denver's top 5 defense in the NFL, and Minnesota still has those horses on defense to shut down an offense that doesn't have very much shape to it out there. I like the under in this football game here.
Yeah, and then I did, and I still do, but I haven't pulled the trigger. Nico says Vikings play down to the competition. I took the points. Robert Weimer says right on, Nico. The Vikes will barely beat the Broncos 24-17. Which would make this game just squeak over the total. Eddie Oler, Broncos 1-3 to the under on the road. Lean Denver team total under. And Matt Cruz says Coach Fanny Pack is familiar with the Vikes and their scheme. Whale Capper, Broncos, Vikings.
Yeah, so I agree generally with Donnie's takes on this game. I think Brandon Allen going up against a Vikings defense that has complexities that can give you, multiple looks. I think that's a bad matchup for them. Cortland Sutton is performing super well as a wide receiver, and the Vikings secondary is not performing great outside of Harrison Smith, and so there will be room there for him to make some plays and to move the ball, to convert some third downs. But it still is a brutal spot to for your second ever start in the NFL. You're going on the road to the Dome. It's going to be rocking. The place is going to be fired up. They just got a primetime win. So I stayed away from this one, but I get all the logic, and I guess I was ready to fire on this under, and then I saw the number creeping up, and I was like, well, that's bizarre, and I kind of figured out where it had started, and I talked to one of my buddies who manages some paperhead accounts, and I was like, what's up with what's going on here? And he's like, he's like the hottest side that we've had betting NFL totals this year is all about this over. And I was like, I looked at him like sideways, like how, why? I can't imagine in what possible universe, because, there are a lot of matchups here that I do think favor the under. So that was kind of enough to kind of shake my confidence and keep me off this game. And I would expect that we see the Vikings get a win just on the basis of having kind of a more complex look defensively and being able to shake and scare a young quarterback who's inexperienced. But there may be something about this game that I'm not seeing, that I'm missing. So I'm gonna watch from the sidelines.
Let's move on to Jets Redskins. I was ready to pull the trigger on Tuesday with the Redskins, and now the market's moved towards Washington. People are saying back Washington, and I've got cold feet now. I just don't think I could take money in my pocket and put it on Haskins and Callahan. This is an ugly, ugly football game. Darnold, before he beat the Giants last week, Darnold threw 9 interceptions his previous 4 starts. Jamal Adams had a nice game against the Giants, AFC Defensive Player of the Week honors. 9 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, fumble recovery. Took it back for 25 yards for a touchdown. The Jets' defense on the ground has been good this year, holding opponents to 3 yards per carry. As much as I think that Geis coming back, and man, I mean, when this has just been going on for 2 years now, hoping that we could just see a healthy Geis. Maybe we'll never get a chance to, but I just don't think that I should have my money invested in Haskins with 4 picks and 0 touchdowns and then think, oh, Callahan will have these guys prepared. I just don't think I can do it. The market's going with me, and I can't do it at this point. I've got a big question mark beside the Redskins and an asterisk, and Donnie getting warmer towards the Redskins might be enough to push me over, but I can't trust Haskins. Donnie, Rightside, Jets, Redskins.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, I don't think it's a good game actually, but it's a good one actually. Try to think about some of these angles that we could try to get after and try to make some money. Because you're right, Tuesday, Jim was saying, what, man, look at the Jets. Wait a second, Jets are getting points in this football game. Let me wrap my head around this. It's a rookie quarterback. Dwayne Haskins looks overmatched, and what am I missing here? Maybe a season-saving, or I should say, a coach-saving win last week against the New York Giants. And I remember, it's like, yeah, dude, the Jets just beat the Giants. The Jets got leveled by the Miami Dolphins, so we're not talking about elite-level competition when you're looking from a Jets perspective. Le'Veon Bell a little bit under the weather this week, also battling a little bit of a knee injury. But there's some side points that I actually like in this, because when we have to remember the Jets' overall offense, because even when you're looking last week against the Giants, they weren't all that impressive. And on the season, points 30th, yards per play 32nd, passing yards per play 30th, rushing yards per play. Hey, the great Le'Veon Bell, what an unbelievable signing. 31st in the NFL in yards per play on the ground. So obviously all that money spent is not coming back with a dividend for the New York Jets. Now, when you take a look at Washington, what don't you like about it? Well, organization fired their head football coach. It's usually a mess. They're starting a rookie quarterback. But the one thing I do like is the rookie did get in some games. The rookie went into a tough spot in Buffalo. And look, he was okay in that football game, but they didn't embarrass themselves. And they were playing most of the time in that football game under the number into a late touchdown by the Buffalo Bills. But the one thing I keep on wrapping my head around is you look at like who the Jets played, and then you take a look and say, well, Washington stinks, but there has to be sort of a reason for it. 4 out of the past 5 weeks playing teams on defense, Jimmy, ranked 8th, 6th, 3rd, and 2nd in the NFL. You're not going to do much damage on offense when you're playing top 10 elite level defenses. Now you get a little bit of a breather. But the thing about the Jets, Jimmy, not the worst defense yet. They're about middle of the road in the NFL. I think there's some matchups there. Darius Guy's coming back, so he can accompany with Adrian Peterson. I just like some of the matchups here just by who they played over the past 5 weeks, where baptism by fire. Now you get the Jets at home. This is a game you should win. I completely agree with the line movement here. Anything less than 3, I think the Redskins win by 3 or more and cover this line.
Akira likes the Redskins. Sean Nick says it would be better to give your money to a homeless dude instead of back anything in the Jets-Redskins game. And Robert Weimer says, right on, Sean, buy some booze for the local bum under the bridge with the money you were going to bet on this thing. Yes. Michael Ervelina said, Jimmy, never, ever, ever, ever put 1 cent on Haskins. Throw it in the toilet instead. And Robert Weimer says, with a gun to my head, I would select that the trigger be pulled. Jets, Redskins, Whale Capper, how do you break this one down?
If this was just some random week in the middle of the season where there was no situational factors and you were giving me points on the Jets in the spot, I would take it every day. I would look for an underplay on this, even at 38.5. But I don't think that this sets up well for the Jets or for the under. And I think it's mostly just the matchup of, the fact that you've gotten now 2 weeks of, the Redskins coming off a bye, deciding on Haskins, giving him first-team snaps, getting him actual prep here. If he's ever going to look good this season, it's going to be in this game because he's going up against a secondary that's dealing with a ton of injuries. The Jets are not generating a ton of pressure. This is a nice spot for him to, kind of get a little confidence. He throws a pretty nice deep ball. Get McLaren running some routes, some posts, some deep routes, and let him fling it. And see if you can generate a little chemistry here between some of your young weapons on this team who are already familiar with each other. This sets up well for, Haskins to have kind of a good-looking game, good-looking performance. And, Bill Callahan has a tendency of kind of, working the clock in a way that really disrupts the opponents. Like, the Niners not covering, the Vikings not covering. I can't remember. I don't think the Bills might have covered, but it was a weird garbage time score. But the way that the Redskins kind of work this clock really disrupts the other team's kind of overall plan and performance here. And so, if the Jets are sitting around thinking like they're going to have time to try to make some comebacks against this Redskins team, and they're going to look up and see the clock's pretty much dead, and they're out of luck here, then I think that that's going to be a problem. And I would expect the Redskins to look pretty good and to be live for a comfortable win here, but they are the lesser talented roster. They just happen to be a little bit healthier at the right places right now. So stay away from me.
The over is an interesting look that I hadn't really thought about as an angle here, but it does make some sense. Just 38.5 up from 37.5. All right, let's move on to Bills, Dolphins, Buffalo, and the Fish. Bills, and this is my futures here. I have 400 on Buffalo over 6.5 wins and 400 on the Dolphins under 5.5 wins. So, I'm expecting to cash that Bills over here this week. The Bills did not look good against the Browns. The Dolphins looked when Buffalo beat them 31-21, and that was 22 points in that fourth quarter for the Bills. That was when we were sitting here going, the Dolphins are going to go 0-16. And then when we saw the Dolphins win that first game with Flores, you could see that the players like him. You could tell that, and Fitzpatrick coming in and showing character and leading this team, when they were 0 on the season. I like all that stuff. And the Dolphins have improved defensively. A month into the season, they ranked last in the league points and yards allowed. Week 6 through 9, 15th in scoring defense, 14th in yards allowed. And this Bills offense has looked very bad lately. 25th in points, they've totaled 29 points in their last 2 losses. The only two teams have allowed fewer points, but the Bills' run defense is not looking good. In their 3 games since the win over Miami, the Bills have allowed 492 yards rushing. Do the Bills go in and smash the Dolphins? I don't know. I don't think they are going to. I'm not going to sit here with a Dolphins ticket in my pocket after 2 straight wins, but I've got nothing on this game so far. Donnie, Rightside, Bills, Dolphins.
It's a tough one because when you're just looking at numbers here and you're just trying to make some common sense, Buffalo should scorch the Miami Dolphins. But then again, you look at the Dolphins and how they're winning. They went on the road this week against Indianapolis. Oh, man, 16-12 win. What a great win. They had barely 200 yards of offense and actually won that football game. Sooner or later, that has to play out. The New York Jets, 50 yards on the ground, 266 in the air. Take it back to a really good Pittsburgh defense, which you're going to come up against pretty good defense in the Buffalo Bills. 60 yards on the ground, 170 in the air. When you hear those numbers, it's one thing. You're playing hard for the coach. I get it. And some of these outcomes are working into their favor where they're covering. But sooner or later, don't you think like that, it has to come to roost where if you're not putting up 200 or at least 300 yards of offense and you're staying in the 225 to 230 range, sooner or later that's going to play a toll. And I think it comes this week. And I'm just short of betting this football game because it was starting to tease me during the week. You saw the 5s get down there in the 5.5. So I'm like, I got to go on it now. It actually made me feel a little bit better that the 6.5s were showing up. But I understand, hey, they're playing hard for the head football coach. I get all that. And when you look at the Buffalo Bills offense, not the biggest big play offense where when you're looking to cover a touchdown or more on the road, you want to know that you can hit that 65, 70-yard strike or have a dominating game on the ground. The one thing that keeps on grooving back to the Buffalo Bills is just looking at Miami again. 31st in points, 31st in yards per play. Passing offense 30th, rushing offense 32nd, and then you match with almost identical numbers against their defense. The Buffalo Bills should win this game by a touchdown or more, but something just not allowing me to pull the trigger in this one, Jimmy.
I agree, and I'm not going to pull the trigger at this point. Let's see what Whale Capper has to say. Bills, fish.
Yeah, I haven't bet a Dolphins game since week 2, and I'm not starting now. This is a good spot for the Bills. They should bounce back. They should look better. The Dolphins don't really have the right personnel matchups to take advantage of where the weaknesses in the Bills' defense. So it's going to be pretty tough for the Dolphins to score in this game. The problem is, wildly, crazily, Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Advanced metrics on him would tell us he is performing at a top 10 quarterback level this season, which is absolutely insane. And on the flip side, Josh Allen is a bottom 5. So this is not a great spot to be laying points on the road with the worst quarterback. And I think the Dolphins have gone through trauma together. Like the beginning of this season where it looked like they for sure were going to go 0-16 and they couldn't look any worse. They couldn't be any worse. I think as a team, players were quitting, players were getting traded, but as a team, it does appear like they've come together here and, really galvanized and have kind of a strong foundation now, and they're working together. They're playing hard for each other, and you have to tip your cap to them. I thought the Colts almost certainly were going to come back in the second half of that game against Miami last week, but it was not to be. I'll probably keep an eye on opportunities to back the Bills in the second half if Miami gets out to their characteristic fast start. But this is one that I'm staying off of pregame.
Robert Weimer says Buffalo torches the Finns and takes some leftovers home for lunch on Monday. Also, the over with Fitztragic throwing to catch up. Sebastian Arnold said Finns have been a good against the spread team as of late. Dan Kelly says the Bills D is for real elite. Nico says I like the Bills in this spot. Dolphins regress here. Eddie Orler leaning towards the under. Sports 78 says Miami's honeymoon ends on Sunday. Bills need this game to stay in the wildcard running. And Brooklyn Funk Project, who I'm now following on Twitter, says my Bills concern is back-to-back road games. And Seth says Bills played powder puff schedule. So Sports says perfect spot to fade Miami. Matt Grew says Bills will be out late in South Beach. And the Sports 78 said this is what Fitzmagic does. He starts fast and then totally collapses mid-season. Okay, let's just keep rolling along. I'm not going to make a move in the Bills-Dolphins game. Here's a bet I just made after breaking this game down a little more with Donnie. Also, Teddy Covers came in with the Texans as well. And I want the Texans here, and I'm close to making a move on the over. And I predict after I hear both of your breakdowns, I will make a move on the over. Texans, Ravens. This is going to be a fun game. Total opened up at 50. It's now 51 and 51.5. Baltimore opens up at -4.5. There's a 4.5 at Pinnacle right now, but there's 4s everywhere else. I got a 4.5 at -111 for show purposes. Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, it doesn't get any better than this. These two guys are going to put on a show, and I can't wait to watch it. Jackson, 2,036 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 702 yards rushing, 6 scores. Watson, 2,432 yards passing, 18 touchdowns. He's run for 279 yards and 5 touchdowns. Texans lead the NFL with 13 forced fumbles, own a +3 turnover differential. Baltimore owns a +4 differential. Marcus Peters has stepped up in a big way in this Ravens backfield. He's looking very good since that October 15th trade. He's helped this backfield look good. I just, the Ravens could roll and make me look bad here. They had that incredible win over the Patriots. Then they play a bad team in the Bengals. I just think Deshaun Watson can give them a game, and I'm on the Texans +4.5 here. Donnie Rightside, Texans, Ravens.
I like your look on it. I do. I think Houston's going to be game. If we take a look at just the overall numbers of the game and what it means, I mean, these are two elite-level offenses going against two middling defenses. Crazy. What Houston always has a good defense. Baltimore always has a tough defense. If you take a look at the numbers, really not. 13th in points for the Baltimore Ravens on defense, for Houston 15th, and the all-important yards per play. Baltimore's defense 22nd in the NFL. Houston's defense 23rd. Both of these quarterbacks electric. And look, we didn't get a lot of good news from beginning of the week to the end of the week if you're looking at this game from a total perspective. Do I do think it goes over total? Sure, I do. But instead of looking in like that 46, 47 degree temperature range, we're now down into the high 30s. Instead of looking at like 7 to 8 mile an hour winds, you're now looking at 13, 14, 15 mile an hour winds. Now, the good thing is both of these offenses not really built on precision strikes. Two big arm type quarterbacks that do like to throw the ball deep, but this is more on improvising, making plays, and guys really running wide open over the middle. Also, a little bit of a downgrade here. I thought Will Fuller would be a full go for this football game, coming back to practice early in the week. He's gotten in limited practice each and every day this week, including today on Friday. He's listed as a game time decision. But here's, look, you want to win every football game. This is a huge game in the AFC. But if you're looking from a Texans perspective, the only thing I would maybe, pump the gas a little or pump the brakes a little bit on this game is look who they're playing on Thursday Night Football. That's a monster game with the Indianapolis Colts in the division. Do you say, hey, Will, good luck out there? Or do you say, you know what? Let's give you an extra 3 to 4 days here so you can be ready for a divisional game, which theoretically is a lot more important than this game versus Baltimore if you're looking from a season perspective. That's the only little bit of a downgrade, but I do think you're going to get some points in this game. I think it's going to be a great game to watch. Will Fuller or no Fuller, that Houston offense should be able to move the football and vice versa with the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore's doing some really special things here, and even looking at the opening line, saying, wait a second, 4.5. Oh my God, I watch every week this Baltimore team run up and down the field. You're getting them on a pretty good time. You're coming off a bye here for the Texans. This should be a good football game. I would lean towards getting the points here, but I do think we do get some points, and they still get over the total.
So you still, regardless of the weather and no Fuller, you still think they get over the total?
These two offenses go up and down the field. They really do. Then they should.
Well, let's hear what Whalecat has to say. Texans, Ravens.
Yeah, I think if you haven't already bet the over, wait and see if it does trickle down as this weather news tends to dampen the enthusiasm in the market. It may come back down to 49 range. I bet it earlier in the week when it was a little lower. I like the over in this game. I think this is a score-for-score type of situation, not a type of game where these guys are playing field position where they're kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. Both offenses are dynamic. Both defenses I have huge question marks on. The Houston defense without J.J. Watt, even though they're getting some players back healthy in the secondary, those players weren't very good to begin with. So it still is a huge problem in terms of how they're going to cover, how they're going to stop Lamar Jackson. The Baltimore offense here should get into the 30s. They are absolutely set up perfectly to shine on Sunday. And Deshaun Watson throughout his career has been able to go score for score with the higher powered offenses in this league. And the Baltimore defense, while in general they have played a little bit better the last handful of weeks, they are mostly kind of primed on being able to rush the passer, get after it in the and disrupt the passing game. And with the Texans offensive line being rested and healthy and playing a hell of a lot better lately, I don't know that they're able to do that in this spot. And that opens things up for, just like Donnie said, for Deshaun Watson to scramble, make plays out of the pocket, and improvise in a way that keeps them in this game. So it should be a hell of a lot of fun. I think Baltimore likely covers. I have them by 7, but I do like the over in this game quite a lot.
And you think that it might be worth waiting to see if this drops a bit. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm on the Texans plus 4.5. I was on the Texans against the Chiefs, and I see this sort of as a similar situation where, as you say, Deshaun can keep them in the game. Let's move on to Cardinals, Niners. This was my only bet I'd made before today. Made it on Tuesday. Cardinals plus 11.5. It was shocking. When I was talking to Donnie, I was like, how could this possibly beat 11.5 when you have a 49ers team that's not going to have Sanders, that may not have Kittle? Now it looks like won't have Kittle and won't have Brady. You take away a Pro Bowl wide receiver, a Pro Bowl tight end, and then you take away their number 1 running back. And don't forget, Quan not in the lineup for the year. They also lose Ronnie Blair. They're just not in good shape, and I was just shocked to see the 49ers had season low in yards and yards per attempt passing. They looked bad. And then they were rolling. They were rolling until Emmanuel Sanders left. The offense looked good. At first, they scored 10 points on the opening 2 drives when Sanders is healthy, and then 6 more points on offense, the rest of the game on offense. I just was shocked at this 11.5, and I said by kickoff it'll be at 10, and it was at 10 within 48 hours. It was at 10, and there's still 10s now. There are a couple 10.5s. This total at 46 opening, and now 45.5 and 44. You gave reasons for the under, Donnie, and I think it's a great call. I agree with that under, and I'd like to jump in with it. I haven't made that move yet. Andy Isabella playing very well. Fred Warner did step up for the Niners last week, but Andy Isabella rolling right now. It's just hard to take an under when Arizona's defense ranks 31st out of 32 teams in points allowed, total yards allowed, passing yards allowed. They've given up at least 21 points in all 10 of their games. So that's slowed me down here. 49ers are going to be out without Joe Staley again. He did not look good. Going to be gone. And McGlinchey did not look good either. Have you made a move on this under, Donnie? Have you made a move on the Cardinals and 49ers?
Yeah, I wanted to, if we take a look, Jimmy, I'll get to that in just a second, but going over in the season, you see that front 7 from the 49ers. They will beat your brains in left and right if you have a quarterback that's not mobile in the pocket. And getting back to the point, looking at just say like a total in this football game, last week you said, well, wait a second. I mean, 27-24, it's 51 points. They could easily get over this total. You have to look last week also an overtime game. You also were buoyed by 2 defensive touchdowns in that football game. The Seattle Seahawks offense was still a lot stymied. You basically had 5 quarters, and they end up with, on offense, 147 yards on the ground and 189 through the air. But the one thing that you do like and say is, Jimmy, is it's about the number. If you're going to get 11.5 from this football game, meaning you have to lose by double digits, theoretically by 14 points, it's a great week to do it. You had an overtime game on a Monday night game in a huge stage against a divisional opponent, and now you got to take that breather and come back against another divisional opponent who just got a pretty good look at you the week before and said, you know what? God damn it, we only lost by 3 points. We can hang around with this football team. And then you compound that on top of it as saying there's an injured football team. Now, if George Kittle's 100% in this game, Emmanuel Sanders is 100%, their running backs are 100%, that's a completely different scenario. But you're talking about a little bit of a wounded walking squad. So when you look from the perspective and say, all right, can they win the football game? Sure they can. Can they win by 14 points on a short week and injured? And the one thing that you need to survive against this defense of the 49ers is a mobile quarterback. That's exactly what Arizona has here, Jimmy.
Yes. And is that going to keep you off the total?
Probably, just because I'm the type of guy that says, you know what, I love these unders, and when I like the unders, it usually hits, but then when I bet the under, it goes over, and I shake my head like when I have the Giants-Jets under last week. I thought it was such a great move, and they just went up and down the field. The only reason I'm laying off on that, but I agree with the under in principle, and I agree with the points here in principle.
I agree, and I'm on the plus 11.5 very happily. But if I could just trust this Cardinals defense a tiny bit, I would be on the under. Maybe Whale Capper can talk me into it. Whale Capper, Cardinals, Niners.
Yeah, under. This is the best total of the week. It's not even close. This is a perfect setup for an under. There's literally no one on this. You know the Niners. The Niners are sort of your team, aren't they, Jimmy?
They are.
These guys do not have receivers outside of Emmanuel Sanders and George Kittle. If they're not out there performing healthily, there's going to be drops. There's going to be lots of hesitation on Jimmy G to even unload because he doesn't know if his guys are catching the ball. I mean, maybe Shanahan, talks these guys up, inspires them in some way, or scares the crap out of them that they're going to get cut, and they finally start performing well. But this is a really, really poor wide receiving core out of their top two targets, and I don't expect either one to play in this game. Matt Breida is also limited big time. He's been an enormous part of their offense in terms of diversification. If I'm the Cardinals defensive coordinator, I'm literally putting two hats on Tevin Coleman and saying, beat me somewhere else. Good luck with that, guys. On top of all that, this is a short week of prep. On top of all that, they just played each other. They just exposed, plan A, B, and C against how to attack each other in what was a pretty hard-fought game when it all was said and done. And I like the look of, I like the look of the under even more than I like the points with the Cardinals, because Kyler Murray is not playing as well on the road as he is at home, which is not entirely shocking given that he's a rookie quarterback. So this should be a field position, field goal type of game. I would expect this one to land, somewhere in the high 30s, low 40s. So I'm on under 45, and I feel pretty solid about this one.
That's almost completely sold me. I want to take the under, and we saw what the Niners did without their pieces. They look terrible, absolutely terrible. The under makes sense. I'm on the Cardinals plus 11.5. Let's keep rolling along. Move on to Patriots Eagles. Wow, this is just a polarizing game. We've been talking about it all week. The cappers liking the Eagles, a bunch of cappers saying, you're nuts for that. Belichick off of a bye. We know that this Patriots team has played against such trash that we have no idea who they really are. We have no idea who they really are. Eagles have won 2 in a row. Patriots are coming off their first loss in that 37-20 game. They're both coming off a bye. They're both well-rested. They're getting healthier. Patriots have allowed 10.9 points per game, but who cares? Let's see what they do against real teams. Patriots, N'Keal Harry is available to make his NFL debut. Because some news, they have no deep threats at all, and that's the Achilles heel right now of the Eagles is their secondary. But can the Patriots do anything about that? Maybe N'Keal can't. The Patriots have allowed at least 135 yards rushing in 4 of their last 6 games. Donnie will know if Jason Peters is coming back for Philly. Alshon Jeffrey out Sunday for Philly. Donnie Rightside, Patriots, Eagles.
Look, this is one of these games where I look and I say to myself, all right, let's get something straight here. Patriots are 8-1. They're going into a bye. There's no better coach in the history of sports than to give this guy, that's maybe Nick Saban giving him like 6 weeks to get ready for a title game. But outside of that, giving this guy time to sit back and get a game plan together being Bill Belichick. So I look and I'm like, all right, let's see early in the week. You know what? That line says 3.5. The Eagles probably got a good shot to win this. Coming off a bye themselves at home where they generally play well. They're going to be healthy. And then I see as the week goes on, the Eagles the only team in NFL history that get beat up over the bye. So you're saying, all right, this is how the Eagles could win. And your first point there, Jimmy, Jason Peters is going to be healthy. He's going to probably start this football game. So you have one of the elite offensive lines intact. And you say, all right, good. We're not really that good at wide receiver. We didn't improve ourselves at the trade deadline, but we should be okay moving forward. Maybe the younger guys will step up. But at least we have Alshon Jeffrey, who can be a serviceable wideout. He's out this week. So they say, oh, okay. Well, here's what we can do then. We're going to run some string of whack wide receivers out there, but we'll line up a lot in 12 personnel, which means 2 tight ends, and we'll really get big with Zach Ertz and Goddard over the middle, and we can do a lot of power rushing, as we saw Howard has done throughout the season. Oh, wait, Howard's probably not going to play in this game either. So now we're the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz, good quarterback, good offensive line. Rookie in Miles Sanders. Jay Ajayi, who was signed on a Friday, which I don't even know if he even put pads on in the last 16 months at this point, but he's probably going to be your backup running back. And then you look at the Eagles defense, which again is much healthier, but Nigel Bradham mysteriously missing for like 6 weeks with some ankle injury that nobody knows about, who's your best linebacker. Now you're going to line up against Tom Brady with a healthy wide receiver core and a week to prepare. And you know what I look at again, Jimmy? The line hasn't moved one bit So either somebody knows something about this football game or just saying, don't believe the hype in the Patriots. They're not the team they're supposed to be, even though they're healthy going into Philadelphia. And Philadelphia has zero weapons on offense to actually move the football against statistically the top-rated defense in the NFL. I don't have a side either way, but if I'm a gambling man over the past 25 years looking at lines like this is the craziest, worst, stank line of the week that the Eagles are getting 3.5 points, and it hasn't moved despite every single thing coming out is another knock at the Eagles. It's amazing to me, Jimmy.
It is amazing. This is a game that we love action. We want to have action on games, so our heart's beating through our chest. But I feel like I could just watch this game without a bet and still be enthralled. I just keep hearing two different looks here, and we're going to hear another one right now. Whale Capper, take it away, Patriots, Eagles.
Yeah, I feel like I whiffed on this one. I played the Eagles, but I think the look was probably the under. All the points that Donnie raised there were relevant. The only thing I can kind of sprinkle on top of that is it's not like you were really going to do a whole hell of a lot with your wide receivers, even if they were healthy. The strength of this Patriots defense is clearly in their secondary, clearly their coverage, their ability to take away your wide receivers. So if you're running out the first and second best wide receiver in the league or the 51st and 52nd, I don't think it really matters against the Patriots team, because the way to attack them is exactly who they'll have out there. They'll have an offensive line that can generate some push, that can get a ground game going, and they'll have two tight ends that they can run over the middle, and they can, hit this, try to attack some of the lesser athletic linebacking core with the Patriots, who aren't quite as fast. So I think this sets up well for the Eagles to sustain some sort of offense. Maybe they get to 20-ish points. And on the flip side, I don't think you can expect much out of this Patriots offense, because they have major issues with the continuity in their offensive line. They have no ability to generate a rushing game. They are basically, they have no tight end. They have no wide receiver threats that can get down the field, and there's no chemistry between Brady and his wide receivers. They legitimately have, they're not even one-dimensional. They're like half-dimensional. They can throw short passes to Edelman. They can throw short passes to James White. If you think that's enough to get them a win comfortably by, i.e., more than a field goal, then, good luck to you. Bet the Patriots. But I have a very suspicious feeling that this is much more of a field position game, that this is, team with the ball last wins, that these are two coaches that are very, very capable of, bringing in game plans to this to set their teams up to have an ability to win as time winds down on this clock. And if you're going to give me 3.5 points with one of those two teams, and oh, by the way, that team happens to be at home and happens to have an enormous home field advantage with the way that the crowd gets whipped up in these type of big games, then I'm taking that every time. So I went 3.5 on the Eagles, but if you still don't feel great about either side here, this game is likely going under. I got to tell you.
A very interesting breakdown. Donnie, do you agree if you had a free play on the total that you would take the under?
Absolutely, and here's the reason why on that too, because you're looking not so much of the cold weather here, but Philadelphia, again, the stadium is in a place called Point Breeze section of Philadelphia. 15-mile-an-hour winds in this game. Let's also remember, the Eagles do have a really good field goal kicker in Elliott, but when you look from the opposite side, no longer do you have a Hall of Fame kicker for like 25 straight years. They're struggling, and 15-mile-an-hour winds in an opposing stadium, that's big, and that could be a big move on the under, where now Bill Belichick, instead of trying a 47-yarder on 4th and 5, he's going for it now. So instead of putting points on the board, you might be able to buck that trend.
Do you also think the public will bet the over when they see a 45-point line or 45-point total in a Patriots game? Donnie, do you see this total moving up?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they will, because most of the time the public's going to say, wait a second, the Eagles have no weapons. There's no way they're going to, you know what I mean? If the Eagles were full go in offense, you probably, Brady and this Eagles defense, you would. But just the scenario of the public getting scared that the Eagles don't have anything, or at least big strike capability on offense, I don't know if that total is going to go up. But to be honest, I'll be very surprised, Jimmy, if we don't see a 4 on game day where the public gets whipped up into a frenzy on Saturday or Sunday when they finally see the Eagles' injuries and it's Tom Brady. He only has to win by 4.
Very, very interesting. Can't wait for this game. And the under now, I'm interested. All right, let's move on to Bengals Raiders. I wanted to make a move on the Raiders on Tuesday, and for some reason I stopped and didn't make it. And now money coming in on the Raiders. There's 11s and 11.5s on the board. I could have got it at 10.5. This total opened up at 48.5. That's where it stands now. There is a 49 at bookmaker. the Raiders are playing good football. They're playing good football, and Finley is I don't quite understand the move to Finley. Obviously, Dalton's played his last game for the Bengals at this point. Finley goes 16 of 30, 167 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick in that loss to the Ravens. Mixon rushed the ball 30 times. The Raiders have an issue at safety. Carl Joseph went down, season-ending foot injury last week. But the pass rush stepped up, finally. 5 sacks against the Chargers. We've been waiting for Cleveland Farrell to step up. He did that, 2.5 sacks after getting none since the opening game. And after Donnie broke this game down on Betting with the Bag this morning, I did pull the trigger on the Raiders first half, -6 at -120. And I could double up in this situation. Everybody's carving up the Bengals. Why wouldn't the Raiders carve them up as well? Donnie, Rightside, Bengals, Raiders.
I love it, Jimmy, and I'm glad I was able to talk in that because I think it's a pretty solid play. You got Oakland coming off a nice victory and an exciting victory over the Chargers. You also got some extra time to prepare against one of the low-level teams in the NFL coming in with not much juice at all. A terrible defensive team that's actually cutting players. Their best linebacker, their most expensive linebacker, he got cut this past week. Preston Brown, he's not going to be available for them. Also, Geno Atkins, who is going to play in this football game, missed some practices this week. So how engaged is their best overall defensive lineman going to be in this football game? We'll see. But I do expect a lively atmosphere in Oakland. I expect a team that's going to be excited because now all of a sudden, we were talking about the Raiders, laughing at them in the summer. You can legitimately sit in the meeting for the Oakland Raiders at their team headquarters with the team and say, we're going to make the playoffs. And that's exciting. When you look at the Bengals, this is just a business trip at this point. And not a business trip where we're going to be focused and ready. A business trip saying, look, man, I got 7 games left. I got to stay healthy if I want to go to free agency. I'm not busting my tail for a team that might not win a single football game and do it on the road. I don't think that's going to help. You're not going to get A.J. Green back so you can over-evaluate your young quarterback in this football game. But also when you take a look at what you have to do, because the prevailing wisdom is going to be that Raiders defense stinks. And no matter what happens, you can score. Just because your defense stinks, you still have to have weapons for that defense to stink. You can't just roll out there and be like, well, there stinks. We'll move up and down. With what? They don't run the ball well. They don't pass the ball well. They have a young quarterback that's going on the road. When we take a look at the teams that are scoring points against the Oakland Raiders defense, the Green Bay Packers, oh, yeah, Aaron Rodgers. Houston Texans, well, look who they got at quarterback. The Detroit Lions, before a back fracture, who can move the football up and down with 3 elite wide receivers in Matthew Stafford. And then you have the Chargers, who still put up 24 points last week as well. If you have an elite level quarterback, Hall of Fame level quarterback, sure, you're going to light up this team. But you're not coming to town with nothing of weapons on offense of consequence. I like Oakland here. I think Oakland wins by 2 touchdowns. If Oakland is up a touchdown or more at the half, they're going to cover this football game as well. The Oakland Raiders, the autumn wind is a Raider and a playoff Raider, Jimmy.
Robert Wyman says, I can't believe that I'm on the Raiders giving double digits. I must be smoking something. Or maybe the Bungles are that bad. Whale Capper, Raiders, Bengals.
Yeah, that's the right side. This is Raiders or nothing. And I didn't get involved in this one just because this is kind of a motivational low spot. I don't love it when you have a team that's super young that's reading press clippings about how much they've overachieved and how they're in the playoff hunt. And then, oh, by the way, they're a double-digit favorite at home against a team that's going nowhere. It's going to be interesting to see if they face any adversity here, if Gruden can kind of seize the moment in the game and get his team fired up again if they're having a bad day. I'm going to stay on the sidelines and keep an eye on this Raiders team because this is likely your 6th seed right now as we shake out the playoff seeding, and they're going to be going up against presumably the Chiefs or the Texans here in the playoffs. So it's time to do a little reconnaissance on this team because I agree with Donnie. The playoff picture sets up and it involves the Oakland Raiders in the AFC.
It does involve in this weak AFC. Let's move on to Bears-Rams. This is a very interesting game. Rams opened up at 7.5 at Pinnacle, but at plus 111. Now 6.5 at Pinnacle, plus 104. Sixes everywhere else. Its total opened up at 41. Now 40. I came so close to making a move on the under, but I held back. I also want the Bears with just a simple thinking of exactly what happened when Cousins went to the Meadowlands and went up against that Giants secondary and gained confidence. Mitchell Trubisky can't go to the grocery store without getting heckled. He throws for 3 touchdown passes, and now he smiles for the first time in months. And we know what Goff does under pressure. He's bad. This Rams offense is bad. It's nothing like it used to be. Nothing at all. And now Aaron Donald is rolling, Jalen Ramsey's rolling, but that's the only thing you can count on from this Rams team right now. And then Khalil Mack, I expect to step up in this heads-up match against Aaron Donald, the two best defensive players of our generation going up against each other. LA lost Brian Allen, their center, and right tackle Rob Havenstein to injuries last week, so Austin Blythe moves to center. And then David Edwards, Austin Corbett, and Bobby Evans are going to be in the starting lineup. These are young players. It makes me think that the Bears should cover in the under, but I've still yet to pull the trigger. Donnie, Rightside, Bears, Rams.
It comes down to one thing with me in this football game. I know the Chicago Bears defense, they're going to give a really honest effort. I mean, they really are. They're going to come with a front four. They should be able to get pressure. They should use the same type of MO that the Steelers just come off like banshees on the corners to put pressure on Jared Goff because he can't get away, and their offensive line hasn't blocked. This isn't the offensive line of last year that led them to the Super Bowl that were just unbelievable, and play action was working in the running game. Todd Gurley's all but disappeared with that leg, and Jared Goff looks like he can't get out of his own way. And what a great performance last week by the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. Cooper Kupp, no catches. Never thought that would be, something that we'd be saying over the remainder of his career. But looking at this game just as a whole, I want to keep it really simple on this. When we're playing, I like the coaching staff better on one side of the football than the Rams. I still liked them last week, even against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They didn't play all that well. Credit to the Steelers. They won that football game. But now you're going against the Bears, who do have an elite level defense. But the Bears have an offense that is something, I haven't seen since maybe I was going back in the 80s, like midget football where we played. And, I'm a 65-pound quarterback, and the guy, my little 65-pound friend, is 5 feet away. But I can't get him the football just because I'm a little kid. I can't get the guy to football 7 feet away. That's Mitchell Trubisky. If you watched last week in the football game alone, yes, they had 3 touchdown passes, 20 points. But there was times to put that football away in the second half. Going from the mid-third quarter to the mid-fourth quarter, the Chicago Bears had the ball 3 times. The sign of an awful quarterback, Jimmy, is getting sacked 3 straight times on third down when he's passing the football. That says, number one, I have no idea what I'm looking at on defense. And number two, I have zero pocket awareness of when anybody's even going to be near me. If we take a look at the past 2 weeks with the Chicago Bears, just the past 2, you can light the Eagles up on defense, right? 9 yards at the half. They finished that football game in Philadelphia. 62 yards on the ground, 102 passing yards against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then we flip it over. Whoa, we got a deep breath here. Detroit's defense, me, you, and Whale Capper go out there and light them up. Jimmy, he threw for 145 yards versus the Detroit Lions last week. 145. If you can't score points, I can't back you unless you're getting like a college football team 17.5 points. This game screams like 17-9 Rams. I took the Rams -6, not because I hate the Chicago Bears defense. It's that if I'm going to have a quarterback on the field that can't make legitimate, easy junior high school throws, I'm not taking you on the road, and I'm not taking you less than a touchdown. Give me the Rams -6 here.
That should be enough to get me off the Bears, shouldn't it? It should be. Let's see. Let's see what Whale Capper has to say. Bears, Rams.
Did you play the Bears last week, Jimmy?
Did I have the Bears? No, I didn't. I only made 3 bets last week until I went into the Monday Nighter. I only had 2 bets on Sunday until going into the Monday Nighter when I had to break down on camera. So I didn't make many moves.
Okay. Well, this is a spot that I think does set up well for them. This is a spot that especially sets up well for their defense. I think that all of Donnie's points were valid and salient, especially the questions asked about the Bears' offense, which is dysfunctional, clearly dysfunctional. Nothing good is happening with Mitch Trubisky at the helm. But I think Matt Nagy has kind of thrown up his hands, and he's not trying to prove a point anymore, and he's slowly adapting his offense where he's at least getting on the score sheet. If he can just kind of get a couple of bundles of competent performance at some point throughout the game, then they're in it. And then their defense is has the horses, has the players, can get after it in the pass rush, and they're going up against what I think is pretty clearly the 32nd best offensive line in the NFL. And if maybe that's not a problem if you have a guy like Deshaun Watson behind your quarterback, and or a guy like Russell Wilson who has some escapability, who can make some improvised plays. Jared Goff is not that guy. Jared Goff struggles immensely when he is facing pressure, especially up the middle. And now he's dealing with a new center, new guards, new right tackle. Like, this is an extremely inexperienced and incapable offensive line, and he's going to have a long day on Sunday night. And I don't think that you can really count on much home field advantage. There's a lot of rumbling and a lot of unhappiness in LA about the Rams. People expected this team to contend for a Super Bowl again, and now they're looking more like an 8-8 team, which is what we talked about in the preseason. This is going to be another tough spot for the Rams. McVay does not look like he has the answers. He's struggling mightily from the head coaching position to find scheme adjustments that take some of the pressure off Goff, that help Goff perform when he's under pressure. This is not working out well here, and I don't think this sets up well for them to compete and get a comfortable win here. 6.5 points in a game where I'm expecting 40 points or less is something that I'm interested in, regardless of the two teams competing. And then you factor in the likelihood that the Bears can come up with the key takeaway, a key turnover. This is a ball hawking unit that has the ability to really put the pressure on the other team by creating short fields for their offense. I think this sets up pretty well for the Bears to get a win, and I'm involved in the Bears plus 6.5. And the only reason I didn't also take a play on the under is the likelihood that we see some defensive scores here.
And the likelihood of defensive scores is exactly why Teddy Covers said he wasn't going to take the under in this game. So interesting. Very interesting that you're on that same sort of feel. We've got to make moves here. We have the Monday night left in Azteca Stadium, Mexico City. Look, I can understand why people want to back the Chiefs here, but Melvin Ingram and Joy Bosa are playing very well right now, and all of a sudden, Melvin Gordon is where he should have been in week 4 or 5 of the season, and the Chiefs are not going to have Ogba. They're not going to have Okafor. It's injuries to the offensive line. They're actually getting guys back now. Eric Fisher, Cam Irving, but I'm not sitting here going, "Oh, the Chiefs are to play." But Flash is, around the office. He believes in this spot for the Chiefs. Let's be very tight here because we got to go. Donnie, Rightside, Chiefs, Chargers.
Yep, I'll keep it quick here. Now, look, it's big that it is in Azteca Stadium because the one thing that you want to give the advantage to is if you have a really good offense. You say, well, why would that be a difference at elevation? Well, when you have two really good pass rushers like the Chargers have, what's going to take place in the late third and fourth quarter of that game? Sucking wind, trying to keep up with that Kansas City offense. The more I look at this football game, the more I like Kansas City, and actually the more I like the over, because the one thing with the Chargers, if you allow them to dictate the game, Philip Rivers will have 7, 8, 9-minute drives if you allow them. But I think Kansas City is going to press the issue on this. I actually like the over, even though it dipped down from 53 to 52.5. I still like that. But Kansas City sitting right in that range with some 3.5s are out there right now. Don't look at last football game, just the final score. The Kansas City Chiefs kicked the shit out of the Titans last week and end up losing that football game. They're going to be able to put up mid-400s on offense, and I'm not so sure that the Chargers can keep pace. I like the Chargers and the total in this game, Jimmy. Or excuse me, Chiefs and the total.
Yeah, the Chiefs and the over. Chiefs and the over from Donnie. Robbie Tagaloa interested in the under here. Robbie Tagaloa, the Samoan Thunder. Let's hear what Whale Cap has to say. Chiefs, Chargers.
I like the Chiefs too. I think 400 points is a little aggressive, but maybe they get there. I would say.
Was that what I said? 400 points and the Chargers? That was a win right there in the close, man.
Well, you said mid 400s. I think that's. I think they could get there, but it's going to be tough. But no, in seriousness, Patricio Mahome up at altitude in that thin air, I would really love to see him try to deliver on his promise to throw a 100-yard touchdown pass. I am super fired up to see this offense in the thin air of Mexico City, and even beyond just the fact that the Kansas City has the goods, they have the talent, they have the right guys coming back from injury, they have the pass rush to terrorize Phil Rivers. Like, all of the ingredients are there for the Chiefs to get a super comfortable win here. And on top of all that, if you watch Thursday Night Football pretty closely, Philip Rivers' arm is dead. He is not throwing a very solid ball right now. He's never really had a lot of zip on his ball. It's always been sort of a weird shot putty thing, but it is especially soft right now. And he is just airmailing some stuff. He is throwing god-awful interceptions. This is not the kind of a spot. This is not the kind of a team where you can get away with that, especially if you're under the gun, if you're trying to go score for score with a dynamic offense. This sets up for a bloodbath, for a beatdown. I wouldn't back the over only because I could see the Chargers come away with 7 points. But I think the Chiefs get into the 30s, and I think they get a cover on -4 pretty easily here. This is my favorite side of the week by far.
Wow, Chiefs -4. Whale Capper's favorite side of the week. Let's get into our action official plays at this point. Let's start with Donnie Rightside. Rafa, what is Donnie Rightside making moves on this week? Coming up, Buccaneers +6, Jaguars team total over 20.5, Raiders -11, Denver, Minnesota under 40.5, and Rams -6 and -110. Let's move over to Whale Capper's action. Take a look at what Whale Capper's on. Panthers -5.5, Houston, Baltimore over 50.5, Arizona 7 under 45. Nice plus lines there. Eagles +3.5, Bears +6.5, Chiefs -4. And let's see what I am on right now. Just 4 looks at this point, but I will be adding Cardinals +11.5, Buccaneers +6, Texans +4.5, and Raiders first half -6. Thank you guys so much. We got to put a bow on this. I got betting with the bag popping off in 9 minutes. But man, we have no show without these great cappers in the chat. Thank you guys so much. Eddie Euler, Chump Change, Tom Marino, Robert Weimer, Seth, Chris Temple, Nick Zero, Rosie, Wade is so old, Sean, Mick, Major Tom, Oliver Wood, Ray Thompson, Kanaska, Robbie Tagaloa, Eddie Euler, Robert Weimer. What a great group. Tash, Tom Marino, Tomor, all you guys. Thank you so much for all the energy you put into the show. Donnie Rightside, any last words for these great cappers in the chat and those watching from home?
Yep, where can you get old guys like me? You can even watch and get some beautiful scenery where cappers at. You even get some highlight, I think, in the background is what they were saying in the chat box. This is the show to do it on the Audible. Put you on the right direction to win money, even if sometimes we don't put you on the right direction. I love it. Thank you for joining the chat box this week, as always. I look forward to it. I want to see next week, Jimmy, sweeps, 3 sweeps. Well, me and you, and we can just sit back and relax the entire next week.
Yes, I would love that. I would love that. Macru99, very concerned. 3 of his plays are my plays, and he has every right to be very concerned about that. What a mess. What a mess. I mean, you guys watched me 2 years back-to-back down here. Easy double-digit plus units on the season, but not this year. Whale Capper, any last words for these great cappers?
Appreciate you guys tuning in. It wasn't highlight; it's a high-intensity ping pong game going on behind me. But the good news is, while we were playing, I've won all 4 bets on this tournament that's going on. So as long it's a great start to the weekend. Perfect for a Friday afternoon. Hope you guys enjoy the beautiful fall weekend and the amazing football on tap this weekend. So thanks again for tuning in, guys.
There you have it. On behalf of Donnie Rightside, Whale Capper, Rafa on the 1s and 2s, everybody here at Sportsbook Review, thank you guys so much for watching. Let's have a big weekend, and we'll see you again Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Good luck on Sunday. Let's get that cash.